Your team has access to AI, and most of them aren't using it. This video is about why and what you're actually supposed to do about it. So you've bought the licenses, you've sent the Slack message, you've even sat through the demo yourself, and 3 months later, your team is still doing it the old way. And here's what the conventional advice tells you at this point. Send more training, make the tool mandatory, push harder. And here's why that almost always makes things worse. In 2024, Upwork published a survey of 2,500 workers across the US, UK, Australia, and Canada. They asked employees how AI had affected their day-to-day workload, and 77% said it had increased their workload, not made it easier. Increased it. And here's the part that's worth sitting with for a second. 96% of the C-suite at the same companies expected AI to increase productivity. That is not a gap in tools, that's a gap in how the rollout was managed. BCG published research in 2024 finding that roughly 70% of AI implementation challenges come down to people and process, not the technology. Only about 10% are actual technical problems. Most businesses invert that. They spend 80% of the budget on the tool and almost nothing on the change. So that's what this video is about, not the software, the change. I'm going to walk you through 3 reasons adoption actually stalls, reasons that don't get talked about enough, and then give you a 4-step playbook for fixing it, a practical one, not theory. Here's the scenario I see most often. It's a Monday morning, someone on your team, let's call her Sarah, runs client reports and has done for 3 years. She's good at it, she's got a rhythm, and she opens Slack and there's a message from leadership saying, from now on, we're using the new AI tool for client reports. What does Sarah feel in that moment? Probably not excitement, probably something closer to, what does this mean for me? Am I not fast enough? Is this because they think I'm doing it wrong? Is this the beginning of something bigger? She goes to the tool. It's unfamiliar. There's no clear instruction for how it applies to her specific workflow. She spends 40 minutes trying to make it do what she normally does in 20. She goes back to the Word doc. And that is not Sarah being difficult. That's a completely rational response to a rollout that didn't account for the human part of the equation. The reason I'm telling you this is because it plays out in some version almost every time I see AI introduced without a change process. The tool isn't the obstacle. It's the experience of the person using it that's the obstacle. Let me give you the 3 patterns I see most often. These aren't obscure. They're just not talked about openly enough. Reason 1 is the workload paradox. So when a business introduces AI, the intent is to save time. But in the early stages of adoption, it almost always takes more time because people are learning a new way of doing something they already know how to do. Add to that the expectation that they'll now produce more output with the time they save, and you end up with people feeling like they're running twice as fast just to stay in the same place. That Upwork data isn't a surprise to anyone who's been through a rollout. It reflects a real experience. 47% of the workers in that same survey said they had no idea how to achieve the productivity gains their employer was expecting. Think about that. Nearly half of the people using the tool have been told it'll make them more productive, and they can't work out how. The fix isn't more training sessions. It's reducing what we ask people to prove before they've had time to find their feet. Give them a specific task to use it on. Not everything, just one thing. Reason 2, the fear they don't tell you about. So, research from Slack's Workforce Index, a survey of over 17,000 desk workers globally, found that employees worry the time saved by AI will just mean they're expected to do more work at a faster pace. And there's a related issue. Significant numbers of employees are using AI and hiding it from their managers. A 2025 survey by Cybernews found that 59% of employees admitted to using unapproved AI tools at work, often because they're scared of how it will look. Now, think about that. Your team may already be using AI privately without telling you, not because they're reckless, but because the psychological environment around it hasn't been set up clearly. The Slack research also found that employees at companies with clearly defined AI guidelines were nearly 6 times more likely to have tried AI tools than those with no guidance at all. 6 times. Not from better software, from a clear message about what's allowed. The fear isn't irrational. If nobody's told your team what AI means for their role, they are going to fill in the blanks themselves. And what they fill in, based on what they're reading in the news, is usually not reassuring. Your job as a leader isn't to argue with that fear, it's to address it directly. Reason 3, adoption without redesign. Here's an analogy that might help. When factories first got access to electricity in the early 1900s, many of them just swapped out the steam engine for an electric motor and kept everything else the same. Same layout, same floor plan, same processes, and they barely noticed the difference. The factories that actually transformed were the ones that redesigned the floor from scratch, distributing smaller motors across the production line, completely rethinking how tasks moved through the space. AI in most businesses is still at the swap the motor stage. Now, what I consistently see is businesses giving people access to a tool, but not changing the process around it. So the tool sits on top of old workflows. it doesn't integrate, it just becomes extra work rather than less work. So the insight here is simple. Giving people access to AI isn't the same as redesigning how work gets done. You have to do both. Right, so here's the playbook. 4 steps, and these aren't theoretical. They're the things that consistently move the needle when I see rollouts actually work. Step 1. Address the fear before you touch the tool. Before you introduce any software, you need to have the conversation that most businesses skip entirely. That conversation goes something like this. We're implementing AI. Here's what it means for this team, and here's what it doesn't mean. Here are the tasks it will take off your plate, and here's what you will do with that capacity. Not vague, not we're exploring AI for efficiency, specific. What you're doing in that conversation is filling in the blanks before fear does. And here's something practical. Be honest. If you don't know everything yet, we're implementing this for proposal drafting. We don't know exactly how it'll evolve, but we'll keep you updated as we learn, is vastly better than saying nothing. The McKinsey Workplace research from 2025 is blunt on this point. The biggest barrier to AI adoption in most organizations is leadership. Not the team, not the tool. Leadership. So lead first, then roll out the tool. Step 2. Start with one task, not the whole tool. Now, this is the one that I see skipped most often. Companies give their team access to a broad AI platform and say, use it wherever you can. And nobody does, because nobody knows where to start. The approach that actually works is narrower. You pick one specific repetitive task that someone on your team does every week, and you make that the focus. So here's an example. Let's say your ops team spends 30 minutes every Friday pulling together a weekly status report. That's 30 minutes times 52 weeks, 26 hours a year per person. If you have a team of 5 doing this, that's 130 hours a year or nearly 3.5 working weeks of collective time on a single task. That's the task you automate first. Not everything, just that one. Now why? Because when it works, and it will work, you have a win that you can point to. You can show the team before and after, and that proof of value does more for adoption than any training session. The Morgan Stanley example is useful here. They didn't roll out an AI assistant to all of their wealth management advisors on day one. They worked with OpenAI to train it on over 100,000 of the bank's own research documents. They tested it rigorously. They proved it worked at quality standard, and then they deployed it and achieved a 98% adoption rate. That's the pattern. Small, specific, proven, and then expand. Step 3, redesign the workflow. Don't just add the tool. Okay, back to the factory analogy. The businesses that got the most from electrification didn't just plug in a motor, they redesigned the floor. So the practical version of this for your business. Once you've identified a target task and introduced the tool, sit down with the person who does that task and actually map out how the workflow changes. Not, here's the tool, figure it out. Have a proper conversation. What's the old flow? Where does AI slot in? What does the person do differently now? And what do they stop doing? This is usually a 30-minute conversation. It's almost never had. When you redesign the workflow, even slightly, the tool becomes part of how work gets done, rather than something extra. And that's the difference between adoption that sticks and adoption that fades within 6 weeks. A quick checklist for this conversation. What's the trigger for this task? What's the input? What does the AI do with it? And what does the human do with the AI's output? Who approves it, if it needs approval? And then you map that out. Write it down, even just in a shared doc. It becomes the new standard process. Step 4, build internal proof and find your champions. Once you've got the workflow working, you need to make the result visible. Now, that sounds simple, but most businesses skip it. So the team does the work, it gets faster, and then nothing. Nobody acknowledges it, nobody shows the before and after, the win evaporates into the background. What actually drives adoption across the rest of the team is seeing it work for someone they respect. McKinsey's research on AI change management identifies what they call super users, people who become enthusiastic, early adopters, and act as change agents for the wider team. Your job isn't to turn your whole team into AI experts overnight. It's to find the 1 or 2 people who get it early, give them room to explore, and make their results visible to everyone else. If someone on your team saves 3 hours a week on report drafting, and you share that in your next all hands, that's worth more than any training session. 3 hours a week over a year is 156 hours, nearly 4 full working weeks handed back to one person. That's a story worth telling. And one more thing on champions. Create a safe environment for sharing what's not working too. The fastest way to find the rough edges in a rollout is to make it easy for people to say, this part isn't working, without it feeling like a complaint. So let me bring this together. The reason most AI rollouts fail isn't the AI, the tool works. The reason they fail is that businesses treat adoption as a technology project and forget that it's actually a people project. When your team isn't using the tool, they're not being lazy. They're responding rationally to a situation where the expectations aren't clear. The workflow hasn't changed, and nobody's addressed what this means for them. The 4-step playbook. 1. Address the fear before you touch the tool. 2. Start with one task, not the whole platform. 3. Redesign the workflow around the tool. Don't add it on top. 4. Build internal proof. Find your champions, make the wins visible. That's it. It's not revolutionary, but it is the difference between a tool that gets used and a tool that gathers digital dust. If you're at the stage where you know you want to automate, but you're not sure which workflow to start with, that's usually where it helps to do a proper process audit first. That's something we do at AIAIO. We sit with ops teams, map out what's actually eating their time, and identify the highest value places to start. Not the most impressive use cases, the most useful ones. If that sounds like where you are, you can find us at aiaio.me. There's no sales pitch waiting for you, just a conversation about your operations. So a quick recap. AI adoption fails because 70% of implementation challenges are people and processes, not technology. Your team isn't resistant to AI, they're responding to a rollout that didn't account for the human side. So, address the fear first, start narrow, redesign the workflow, and build the proof. Do these 4 things, and you won't need to mandate AI. Your team will be asking for more of it. If this was useful, please hit subscribe and leave a comment below with where your rollout currently stands. I read them and I'll respond where I can. I'll see you in the next one.